now you have this recognition that there was a piece missing for years, this lack of presence, and you can bring it into your everyday. But you make a great point. That doesn't cost any sort of money. That is just an awareness and a prioritization of what matters and putting your attention and focus away from work when the time is right, and making sure that you're carving out that time and space to completely disconnect. So I think that's really beautifully said. So to that end, you made mention of the project that you all are working on and what you're documenting throughout your journey. So tell us a little bit about that.
So we are working on a project called Closer to Happy, Redefining Success. And we, as I alluded to before, we shot ourselves just for ourselves and maybe our immediate friends in the very, very beginning of this journey. And just to have it documented, right? Just to
Sure.
be able to look back and remind ourselves where we've come from, how we've evolved, what kind of the steps were, because I think we have a tendency when without doing that, if you're not journaling or tracking like where you are, we have a tendency to look back and go, it was fabulous. Every bit of it was just fabulous. And I handled it beautifully. When in fact, so we just decided to do that with no intention at all. And we documented ourselves while we were in Europe a little bit, just talking about what we were feeling and some of the challenges that were arising and some of the observations about feeling present and free, having a sense of freedom. And again, didn't really have an intention. And then we decided, we mentioned it to a number of friends, and they said there are a lot of people that could use this information and would be really interested in following that journey. So we decided to create a YouTube channel, which is not live yet, but it's about to be. Yeah.
Awesome.
And with no intention other than to help people, and I think ultimately create a sense of community as well. I mean, there are a lot of other people going through this. I would love to hear from other people and get advice. I'm happy to share the 4 things that I know and see what happens. Again, no intention, not selling anything, just sort of putting it out there. So we've been working on that, and it's been a great project to have, because one, I'm learning completely new skills. Cliff is actually editing. We're used to having our own private room full of editors, and now he's figuring out how to do that.
I love it.
But there's how you even create that is a whole new thing. So I love that. I love to learn new things. And so I'm really enjoying it. I mean, I'm not excited about the negative parts of putting this out there, where you're going to hear from people who are going to be really unkind, because that's the way the internet rolls.
Right.
But overall, I'm pretty excited about it. And I think one of the things that I've experienced, especially, we immediately left and we went on a trip, and I was planning a trip, and then we got there, and then we came back, and it was the holidays, and I had all my kids here, and there we jumped into that. And then we started traveling. January, we traveled almost nonstop with friends. And I came back and all of a sudden had this like, oh boy, what do I do with myself?
Sure.
Like, what do I do with my day to day? And feeling really ungrounded and untethered. And as my brilliant group reframed untethered, they reframed untethered, and they said, rather than a woman untethered, you're a woman floating, which I thought was really beautiful, right? And I held on to that and sort of allowed that, because in order to move toward anything, you've got to have some space. You've just got to create space.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
So, but this project kind of gives me, it does give me something to focus on and grounds me and gives me tasks to do. And so when I'm not quite sure what to do with myself, I've got a very long list of things that I can reference.
Right.
And the challenge with that is not to replace work and the way that we think about work and the stress involved in that, replace that with this and approach it in the same way. We're really trying to
I
approach
see.
this and have a lot of fun with it.
I think that's amazing. Well, and infusing that feeling of fun is really what's going to bring it to life and make it more accessible to people and more impactful. So I think that's really beautiful. And I loved what you said about the space piece of things, because I think that's been one of my most powerful learnings as well, is that it was always have the game plan and the daily plan, then broken down hour by hour in what was happening. And I personally realized I had allowed so little space for creative thinking or incubation or innovation, even at all, for years. And so I think allowing your project to come together more organically by giving more space as you're building it out with Cliff will make it even more magical, which is really cool.
I agree. And it's hard, right? After years and years and years of the indoctrination of, must use every minute of every day
Right.
productively, to just step back from that and allow the space and really say no to all of the things coming at you and just
Right.
allow it to happen and allow it to unfurl.
I think that's spot on. Very, very cool. So I would love to switch gears and talk a little bit about your favorite book that you found that's been kind of like your guiding light throughout all of this. So maybe talk a little bit about 4,000 Hours and what you've learned from that book.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, hold on. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. Because I wanted the
Awesome.
author's name. So yes. So right before I left, I found a book called 4,000 Weeks,
Oh,
by
4,000 Weeks.
Oliver
That's right.
Burkeman.
Sorry.
4,000 Weeks. Yeah. And and honestly, might as well. I felt like every paragraph should have ended with, "And Cheryl, what do you think?" Right? It was the right book at the right time, when that happens. Right book at the right time. And
Completely.
the idea of that book is really that we have 4,000 weeks. If you live to 80, you only have
Okay.
4,000 weeks, which is shocking.
Wow.
Shocking. And when you're old like me, you have far fewer left. And so, how are you using that time? I think the subtitle on it is something about time management for mortals or something, which I think could probably throw some people off, because it is about time management. He was a productivity guy. I think he worked in the
Okay.
New York Times or something. He was a productivity guy, and he realized it was all an exercise in futility. You're just always spinning.
Right.
And he stepped back and really looked at, the way we think about our time and our lives
I love
and
that.
the things that matter. And he does get into some tactical time management advice that I think is really solid. It's something I'm utilizing for sure. But instead of having these long list of things that you really need to accomplish, really narrowing it down to, at any given moment, 3 of the most important things instead of having 20 things. And then kind of
Right.
from there, you can put all your action items under each one, which is the tactic I use, I definitely use. And it's very helpful because, again, it's about creating the space to actually execute and be productive, but be productive with something that matters to you.
I love that. It's a kind of, I mean, it's a real paradigm shift from the expectation that our society seems to set, to your point, of every minute packed to the gills with productivity. And I love that as a reframe. And it sounds like you have passed along this wisdom to a number of folks.
When I read this book, I bought probably 20 copies. And
Love it.
it's the book that I send to almost everyone, because I'll bring it up in conversation and there's no one that doesn't say, "Oh, I need that. That's amazing. Like I need to
Right.
hear about that." And rather than wait to see if they are actually going to get it or they're going to forget about it, I just go ahead and order it for people, or give it to them. I have a stack here still. And there, it's the most valuable book. And last month in February, we were driving down the coast, or we had a new grandson born, and we're driving down the coast, sort of meandering our way back instead of the usual quick flight up, quick flight back.
Okay.
Working while we were there, and we just took our time, and while we were driving we listened to that book. Again, the audible of that book is also fantastic. It's the author reading it in his very relaxing posh English accent, but he's lovely. And it was just as impactful. It's really right book, right time, in my opinion.
Okay. Makes sense. And right book, right time for you and Cliff, but I'm sure to your points for so many others, as we're all coming out of that pandemic haze and starting to rethink kind of everything, our priorities, how we spend our time, what we want the rest of our lives to look like. And I think that's really great. It's on my reading list now for sure.
I think it is. It's not, yes, it was a right book, right time for us, but honestly, I think it's a right book, right time for us as a collective society.
Agreed.
Because it's a unique moment in history where people are reevaluating. And I worry that we're all being pushed back into the box and to continue on the way we've always continued on, because it's uncomfortable any other way. And the more people that can get behind thinking differently and designing their lives to operate in a way that's more true to themselves, I think we're going to be better off as a society.
I completely agree. So to that end, you're speaking to how everybody's kind of going back to work and getting back into, or a lot of companies are expecting people to just return to the office as if the last 2 years haven't even happened. And we've seen so much progress. I mean, the Great Resignation is a perfect example of this. So much progress in workers' rights and really women in the workplace making a ton of progress. Actually, I saw the other day that the Great Resignation had been great for women moving into management positions. So that was good too. But you make a good point. At this moment in time where we've got the rubber band stretched and there is a desire by some to pull us back to that original homeostasis, it's a huge opportunity to move forward, and we're not going back to that together as a collective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think especially for women, right? If you have kids, you don't have kids, everybody had the opportunity to connect, if not with their families in a different way, at least with themselves in a different way, with their friends in a different way, with their coworkers in a different way, right? We built different kinds of relationships with our coworkers since we all thought we were going to die. We became much nicer to each other, and we cared more about each other's personal lives, and we became much more forgiving of the fact that there was a 2-year-old crawling over the desk during meetings, right? We all began finding that really charming. To kind of, again, using that analogy of being pushed back into the box and forgetting about all of that is so counter to what I think needs to be happening now.
I absolutely agree. It's like our humanity and sort of this compartmentalization that we had to have, and these roles that we had to play of personal versus professional. All of a sudden, there was no way of getting around it. They were far more integrated than they've ever been, probably in our history as a working society, or modern working society at least. There's real beauty in that, and people being able to be their whole selves when they're showing up to work. Now, to that end, especially for women, I think it's been an even more important moment in time. If you were to have any piece of advice for women out there, what would your greatest takeaway be from all of this and what you've learned?
I think I would say don't settle for a life of shoulds. I think we have a lot of shoulds placed on us at any given time, and with an expectation that we'll just accept that no matter what.
Right.
And I think the other advice I would have is to move forward, move yourself forward, however that looks to you.
Mhm.
So I'm not under the illusion that everybody can just say, okay, fantastic, I'm going to quit my job and
Right.
float around for a while, and then I'll figure out what's next. It almost certainly doesn't look like that for most people, right?
Right.
But it doesn't preclude you from moving forward. If it's learning something new while you're working in your existing role, if it's learning something new, if it's going back to school. I went back to school at 50. I went to
Oh,
business school at
wow.
50. And
Awesome.
and right, I learned things that allowed me to grow personally, allowed me to grow my business, gave me skills that will apply and whatever I do next.
Sure.
The other thing is really starting to network and building relationships outside of your existing kind of circle of influence. And if you're feeling like you want to explore different verticals, different industries, make a complete 180,
Yeah.
just start learning about it and connecting with people that are in that, connecting with other women that are in that might be able to offer you some support and guidance, and just build a support network so that when you are ready to take that leap, you've got a bit of a net, right? You've got a bit
Right.
of a cushion.
Right. It's so true, because to be able to take that leap, there's like all of this internal sort of confidence building, and you're doing all that work internally. But if you can have someone that's a mirror, essentially reflecting back to you the things you've said in the past, kind of to your point with your team being your summit group being like, Cheryl, you're clearly not happy, and all of the reasons that you're making for not leaving, probably you're not going to overcome that. And just having people to reflect back to you when you're just in it, maybe spinning a little bit, can be so helpful to have that external perspective. So I think that's really sage advice.
Yeah, I think it's critical. I think it's critical. I was blessed in having the group that I have, but if you don't have that, go find it. Go find it, because there are other
Right.
people out there. There are other women out there that want to support you. I guarantee.
Cool. I think that's brilliant advice. Now, to also take that one step further, if you were to go back in time to Cheryl pre taking the leap, what's the one piece of advice you would give yourself based on all the hindsight accumulated?
Yeah, I would have done it earlier. I would
Okay.
have done it earlier.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have done it earlier. I think I had, as part of my ego, created this story that if I left, everything would fall apart and I alone can save the day. And that's not true. They would have been fine. I spent far more time than I wish I had being unhappy. And I have one more thing in me, and I don't know what it is yet. I'm intentionally, again, creating that space. So I don't know
Right.
what it is, but I know that I have one more business in me. And I think what I told myself once I made that decision was, every day I'm in that situation, I'm not closer to
Mm,
what I want to be doing, feel like that's going to make my heart sing. And
totally.
so if I had it to do over again, I probably would have left quite a bit earlier. And I have absolutely zero regret.
Oh, I love hearing that.
Yeah.
And well, to your point, I guess to get a few more of those weeks back to spend allowing time and space for the what's next, I can totally appreciate that. So I think that's really beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It was wonderful talking with you. And we can't wait to hear more about Closer to Happy. We'll share more on Raise to Rise when it launches. Thank you so much again, and all the best to you and Cliff with everything.
Same to you, Sarah. Thank you.